Lots of people have questions about what DEI is. I can't explain it all in 5 minutes, but I can give you a really simple example. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is all about ensuring access, ensuring that barriers such as, especially barriers that are based on bias against sex, race, ethnicity, or disabilities is removed, and it has no impact on the decision of whether someone gets a job, they get a business deal, or whether or not they have access to health care. To give you sort of a different perspective is, imagine you have a big bowl of soup, right? And you taste it and it's extremely salty, and you're like, well, I can't put the pepper in, and I can't put the garlic salt in, and I can't put garlic powder in because it's too salty. And so when you have something that's a soup that's too salty, they tell you to add 1 or 2 potatoes to absorb the salt so that it can balance out the saltiness, and then you can season it properly with your pepper and your paprika and whatever else other seasonings you're going to add. Well, that's kind of what DEI is. It's the 2 potatoes that you add to balance out the salt and make sure that your employment population, your business population, your human population, everybody has equal access to what they need, and they're having access to opportunities, and biases are not creating hindrances to their access. So that's kind of like a very basic idea of what DEI is. And to give you a more concrete example, Black Americans spend about $2 trillion a year in the US, and only less than 5% of businesses in the US are Black owned. So if we put this into context to say the natural hair movement, which we know began in the 60s, but we saw a resurgence in the 2000s with the onslaught of the online communities. And out of that grew a lot of products, a lot of hair care products, and just a lot of business. In fact, that industry grew to a $3.3 billion industry in 2024, and it's projected to be over $5 billion by 2033. So you have African Americans in the US with this immense amount of buying power, and then you have the fact that when it comes to hair care, Black women spend 9 times more money than any other group on their hair care. So when you have someone like Target, who in the early days of the modern natural hair movement in the early 2000s, they were beginning to put on their shelves products that came out of this movement, and a lot of the products that the influencers and bloggers were posting. And then eventually we got to the point where they made it a commitment. Their DEI commitment was to spend $2 billion with Black owned companies, and a big chunk of that was hair care products, or beauty and healthcare products, some made for African Americans and some made for anybody. And that was also across at least 500 Black owned companies. So when you put that into the context of all of this, you'll see why DEI is important. You know, I remember growing up and going to Kmart, and I'm dating myself. And where I grew up, we had a big store called Sky City. It was like Kmart. There were no Targets back then. But then, you know, even in Walmart. And I remember the Black hair care section was like just like half an aisle, not even. In the 80s, it was even smaller in some stores. And so to think that today, when I go in Target or when I go in Walmart, those sections are much bigger. And in fact, some stores have integrated the products instead of even putting them in separate sections. At the end of the day, people need different products for different things, right? different textures. We're at different ages. Your hair needs different things depending on how old you are. Even beyond that, some people don't like scents. They want the shampoo and the bubble bath and the body wash that's not scented. Some people have sensitive skin. Some people wear glasses and so others don't. And so you're not out boycotting that all the lens shops should close because not all Americans wear glasses. We don't do that, right? So I think we need to be a little more cautious about how we're stating these things about DEI. They impact our economy. You're talking about African Americans, almost $2 trillion are spent. So I think that we need to, as a nation, think about the bigger picture and the context and not get caught up in the details of it. Not get, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they say. If you need to change the name, if you need to, give more education on it, but let's not just throw this concept out because it is good for all Americans. Did you know that DEI, as it relates to healthcare, is not just about giving better access to healthcare to African Americans? It's not about just giving it to people of color. Did you know that white Americans living in middle America do not have appropriate access to healthcare? Do you know that they're considered an underrepresented population in clinical trials? Because they live mostly in rural areas. They're independent contractors, or they own their own businesses, entrepreneurs, because they're farmers, ranchers, people like that. And they live in remote areas, and for many of them, they're 60 miles away from a large hospital. And so they don't have appropriate access to healthcare. White middle Americans. So this is not just about race or ethnicity. It's about access. Thanks.